of the former president, to treat him as an ordinary citizen and not demand a state burial now because the world is meant to descend on Zambia for that burial. Your take on just their views?
Thank you very much. Quite a packed initial statements that you made there. So allow me to just break that down into little bits that we can all digest. First of all, I'll not want to go into very specific detail as to the mode of arrival and so on and so forth, because quite clearly, in my view, that would be disrespectful of the situation we find ourselves in. Suffice to say, from a headlines perspective, that with regard to the issue of the withdrawal of benefits, we need to put this into its factual context. It's very important that we do so. And the factual context is that we have a provision in our laws which is referred to as the Former President's Benefits Act. And that provision of the law very clearly states that should a former president go back into active politics, they lose the benefits, the emoluments that they ought to get. And it's a logical position that is given. If indeed a person is not retired, how can they be entitled to retirement benefits? So I'll generalize this discussion on this particular provision of law rather than speaking about the allegations that have been made by the family, which we all have different views about. But we are in a period of mourning and we must respect that fact. Let's give a general perspective. Former President Rupia Banda, who is also deceased and was buried at Embassy Park with full military honors, was equally stripped of the benefit by the previous regime, the previous government, that is the government of the Patriotic Front. And this happened, you can fact check this if you wish, on 19th December 2011. And I would like to read what was said by the then Minister of Information, Mr. Given Lubinda, who is Vice President or Acting President, as it were, of the Patriotic Front as we speak now. And please allow me this indulgence. I'll quote from a media statement that was made at the time. Speaking in respect of former President Rupia Banda, the MMD cannot have it both ways. So immediately they announced that he is their president, cabinet office, and the Minister of Finance must take note, and forthwith the calculation of his emoluments is frozen. This was the case with former Presidents Chiluba and Kenneth Kaunda. Dr. Kaunda was denied his benefits for the whole time he remained in active politics. So what is so special about President Banda? End of quote. This was Given Luinda that was speaking as long ago as 2011. What is the point that I'm making? We have a provision of law that kicks in when a former president decides to return to active politics, and it is on that basis that the emoluments are suspended until such time that the former president returns to retirement. And you will also note that in respect of the medical can
I perhaps just interject there on the aspect of the law? Because we do remember that the Constitutional Court had barred him from actually essentially entering active politics in that respect, that he couldn't contest. So you're saying that in as much as the Con Court ruled that he couldn't contest, it was still viewed that he had entered active politics yet again, and that's why still the benefits had to be stripped, that it was immaterial, that he cannot contest per se.
The contestation of the 2026 election in particular is completely exclusive from the act of being in active politics. As you will be aware, being in active politics entails undertaking different activities that are politically related. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can only result in the individual that is involved in active politics contesting in an election. So those are completely separate matters. Does the former president still hold the executive powers of a president of a political party? For example, does the former president determine that the political party will undertake certain activities that obviously are of a political nature? I think those are the questions that are asked, and there is a provision within the law that determines what active politics is. But if you just take the 2011 precedent that was set by the Patriotic Front, it merely acted on the fact that the MMD had announced that the former President Rupia Banda was its president. And so those provisions of the law will kick in. But again, we have to be very circumspect about how we discuss these matters, because in my understanding and in the understanding of government, ours should be a focus on the situation that we have to deal with currently. Ours should be a focus on putting the former president of the Republic of Zambia to rest in a decent and dignified manner. And this was pointed out even in the case of President Kaunda that you referred to. In that particular instance, the family actually went so far as to go to court and seek the court's interpretation within Zambia on whether or not they can their own preference as a family regarding his burial arrangements would prevail. And this was in the case, it's a reported case in Zambia, and by the way, case law is precedent and case law have the force of law in Zambia. It is the case of the people versus Secretary to the Cabinet, ex-parte Kaweche Kaunda, in which, in a nutshell, the court in Zambia, the High Court, determined that the remains of former President Kaunda belonged to the state, and therefore the overriding public interest was of relevance, and he was buried at Embassy Park, contrary to the wishes of the family.
Now, Minister, it's not lost on many that there must be a balance between family interests and the interests of the nation, given the role that he took up as president. But as you say, this is a very delicate situation. There is a life lost. The family is mourning currently. So, and we understand that the relationship or the environment remains to a certain extent quite hostile. What attempts were made to engage the family before heading to court, though?
Oh, yes. As you'll be aware, the family and the government were in a consultative process for several days before the decision to go to court was made. Now, right up to the very eve of the intended burial date, which was Wednesday, there were attempts to continue with this consultative process. And some of those attempts were being assisted by the South African government as well, in an effort to find common ground between the family and the government. And so the decision to go to court was, of course, informed also by the fact that in any given situation where you have a stalemate on a matter of significant importance like this, sometimes it is necessary to go to a third party, an arbiter that can then determine where the balance of convenience should lie. And this is really what informed the decision. We have to also understand that government cannot be seen as a unitary entity. Rather, it must be looked at from the perspective that it is carrying the will and interests of 20 million Zambians on its back. So even the approach of speaking about the president, President hakainde hichilema, wanting to ensure that this process is undertaken is probably not the best approach, or indeed to single out that it is government's will that this particular send-off happens in the way that we are putting forward. Should not be the case. We should look at the interests of the 20 million Zambians that would want to see their former president put to rest in the similar manner that his brothers that passed on before him have been put to rest.
Now, there's another element that is unique about this matter, Minister, that it's playing out in South Africa now. It's unlike the other two that you quote. And we are joined actually by our international news editor, Sophie Mkwena, who has been engaging our government to almost get a position of where government stands as this matter plays out, in as much as we respect the sovereignty of a nation to decide for itself what must happen with its former president. But Sophie, just to rope you in, just share with us what now is the official position of South Africa, even beyond just the outcome of court yesterday to interdict or halt the burial.
The South African government is taking a neutral stand.